Shadowlands has a lot of problems. To deny that is to deny reality. You had covenants being a curse and a serious handicap to the player base. The mall was annoying and, not very fun at the start of the expansion, and it still kind of isn't going into Season 4. Torghast was a chore and wasted potential. The story was muddy, messy, and unnecessarily convoluted. The jailer was and still is an awful villain. The Shadowlands themselves undermined much of what was established about the afterlife prior, and ruined a great deal of Azerothian cultures in the process. You had Sylvanas. I don't think I need to really say that much on that one, and much, much more. Now, many people might point to one or some of those as the largest problem with the expansion, but none of those are the biggest in terms of impact. Sure, Sylvanas turned into a villain and it irreparably damaged her character. Sure, the Jailer's addition to every plot in the game undermined them and made each chapter in Warcraft significantly weaker because of it. But the issue that I'm bringing forward, all of those story beats, are not the problem, but they are merely symptoms of a far larger issue that has been there for the entire expansion. A lot of people don't really even think about it that much, nor might they even know. They don't realize what was taken to be gained, because the biggest problem with Shadowlands, it lies not in the game, but in 3 measly books. You know them, I know them. Everybody knows them. They are the Chronicle books, the overview and the history of Warcraft from the creation of the cosmos up until the beginning of Mists of Pandaria. Now, these 3 journals are like the Bible for Warcraft lore. They were established several years ago now as the foundation to what makes Warcraft Warcraft. Now, you might be saying, okay, Dave, what? How could 3 books just existing be the biggest hurdle to an expansion that really had nothing to do with them? Well, that's just the thing. The Chronicles might have had nothing to do with the Shadowlands, but the Shadowlands had a lot to do with them, because the Chronicles for Shadowlands, to ensure Blizzard could tell whatever the hell story this X-Pack had, they were decanonized. In terms of the overall lore of Warcraft, not just Shadowlands, they don't exist anymore, at least not in the capacity that they did. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We need to rewind the tape, because before we can get into any more of this, well, maybe you don't know why these books, the Chronicles, are so important, why they matter so much when it comes to the story of WoW. So let's pause, rewind, and actually discuss why these books are so important, so you can understand what a giant mistake retconning their hardness in the canon actually is. Now, I think it is fair to say that one of the most obvious notions about Warcraft is that its lore is a mess. and it's a mess. There have been many complaints over the years, many questionable choices made, stories brought to light that never were addressed again, and oh my god, so many retcons dating all the way back to the RTS days. Now, many of these are due to the fragmented way that Blizzard has told stories over the years. For the context of this quest, for example, the lore was bent, but for the context of this one, that lore used in that other quest was changed or ignored entirely. You can almost describe their way of storytelling like blowing bubbles. When you blow a bubble, usually almost 99% of the time, you're going to end up spitting out one singular bubble. Everything in this bubble is related to that one bubble, and that bubble never really intermingles with any of the other bubbles you blow unless the story and the narrative called for it. Then you might get a double bubble. No, not the gum, but 2 bubbles connected together. Now, every once in a while, one of these bubbles, double or single, would pop, and everything contained within would be gone, usually to be replaced by another bubble, whether it be of better or weaker quality. And that is how the stories of WoW have been told over the last 15 or so years now. Basically, they were separate stories under one single roof. Now, going back to foundations and stuff like that, I shouldn't really need to tell you how important the foundation of a house actually is. If you have a shitty foundation, the house is going to be shitty. But if you have a good foundation, a lot of your home's problems would not exist. But what if you had a foundation that was made up of bubbles? What if these bubbles and this method of storytelling that Blizzard employed was the foundation to the house that is WoW? Well, that foundation would be rocky. It would be brittle, cause a ton of confusion, contradictions, misinterpretations, and, yeah, you guessed it, a lot of retcons. As good as it was to have these bubbles where every one person can find a story or expansion or something they'd enjoy out of the bunch, there were still a lot of problems. More problems than there were benefits. They basically added so many bubbles to the foundation of the house that they were all rubbing up against one another and slowly popping. And each pop, the foundation would get weaker. And if the foundation is weaker, so too is the house. So things needed to be fixed. The foundation of Warcraft as both an MMO and a franchise needed a new foundation, because if it didn't get one, things would collapse. The game's storytelling could not survive if it never committed to one thing or another, especially as things evolved and stories became a lot of people's primary focus. And thus, from the minds both old and new, those who started their careers with the Warcraft RTS games, and those who just joined in the production of World of Warcraft, came the infamous Chronicle books, Blizzard's way of cleaning up the lore so that everyone, including them, was on the same page. And it would be these 3 books that would go on to serve as the new foundation for Warcraft lore. No longer would it be bubbles, but something concrete. No pun intended. Now, these books, they were not perfect. They did leave some things pretty loose, and they did have some minor plot holes, but they were nonetheless solid. And that is all that really matters. To some, the Chronicles were hated, but Blizzard did not care. They were going to adhere and commit to them as a foundation for future reference. Of course, that meant some more changes, more retcons, and all that good stuff, but it was in the name of building something for everyone so that the house can stay up. These 3 books were how it happened, and everything else can get fucked. Well, at least that's how it was. Like I said at the beginning of this video, under the direction of a few new faces who would replace the old guard as they slowly faded away and retired, the Chronicle books were deemed soft canon. Instead of being the word of God, the undeniable truth, the ledgers were now just the history of Warcraft through only one perspective, the perspective of the Titans.
So does this mean Chronicle is canon?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, Chronicle is something that we worked on, you know, all of us together going through the Warcraft's history. But the thing to remember about Chronicle that I want you to think about is that, you know, even any history, even something that's as encyclopedic as Chronicle, is written from a certain point of view. And if you look at the history of Azeroth that was contained in there, and even you know what it talked about in terms of the cosmos and things like that, whose point of view would that have been from? Well, that's right, the Titans' point of view, and the people who worked for the Titans, because they ordered so much of Azeroth and what it is. But there's a lot of other perspectives. If you look at the section of Chronicle that talks about the Black Empire was this huge swath of history, but the Titans only give it a few pages, you know, from that point of view in this book. So there's other things in that kind of happened behind the scenes in Chronicle, or were hinted at in Chronicle, that you'll find expanded as we go into the Shadowlands and explore that cosmology even more.
Now, because I know people are going to point it out, Dave, Steve the User actually said yes, the Chronicles are still canon, they're just from a certain point of view, so like, you're like wrong, and you're just looking for a reason to hate the game. To which I say, does a certain point of view sound concrete? No, because from my point of view, it's stupid, but from someone else's point of view, it isn't. You see what I'm getting at here? The chronicles were what was. They were fact. Facts do not have a point of view. You can have a point of view of fact, not the other way around. Do people have a point of view about the color of the sky? No. Is a foundation that sits under a house a point of view? Is concrete a point of view? No. No, it is not. But that foundation keeping the house up, the house of WoW, the one that wasn't even a decade old, it doesn't really matter anymore. You don't need to worry about it. It's just a point of view. And just like that, with one asinine choice, Warcraft's foundation was pulled out from under it. We were now reset back to square one, the square of muddied, unclear storytelling bubbles where anything and everything could be changed to fit what was demanded of the writers at the time and not by the lore that was already established. The only thing that is now concrete is that nothing is concrete. And the only reason anyone would ever do such a thing is if they were scared of commitment, if they desired to alter what had finally, after years, been established to fit things into their own narratives. Because they honestly couldn't be fucked to bend their stories to the lore, and instead bent the lore to fit their own stories. As someone who covers the lore of Warcraft, as someone who has been invested in the game since I was like 7 years old, to watch the rug be pulled out from under me so we could have a man like the Jailer be involved in everything, so that we could have a book like the Grimoire, I wanted to quit. I was pissed. I felt like my time had been wasted, like everything I thought I knew was entirely invalidated for all of the wrong reasons. For example, instead of understanding and being able to properly analyze the tragedy of Arthas Menethil, I feel like now the story has been tainted, diluted so much that it comes off as nothing more than a plot device for the upbringing of a character that did not exist when Arthas' story was relevant. It makes it feel as if any content, any discussion I or anyone else had on Arthas is now wrong. And it really makes you think, if this new team is so trigger happy on altering what was finally set in stone, why after all of this would I ever find investment in what you establish going forward? If I know it could just change on a whim all over again, if I know nothing is set in stone, why should I care when you clearly do not? Why would I buy the Grimoire, the spiritual successor to the Chronicle books, when all it does is add to the confusion, insults the intelligence of the fanbase, pushes aside everything that had been established prior, and could very well just be made obsolete whenever you damn well deem it? Why would I waste the money? You can only tell stories how you want for so long before you have to commit to something. Blizzard did just that. They didn't commit until it became unsustainable. Then they were forced to commit. Then now, as new writers take the reins as the old guard goes, they immediately uncommitted to do whatever the hell they wanted to do. You can't do that. You cannot do that without upsetting the established order and upsetting the fans who believed in what came before you. Because we are not stupid, okay? The team writing World of Warcraft now is not the team that wrote it back 15 years ago when the vast majority of us fell in love with the game. We didn't fall in love with your team's Warcraft. We fell in love with the Warcraft of those who came before you. So why go and change what they made instead of respecting what they made? Because really, believe it or not, the lore built in the Chronicles left open a lot of room for storytelling. The books were made to be super duper flexible. Denuser even admitted this in that very same Q&A I just played.
But there's a lot of other perspectives. If you look at the section of Chronicle that talks about the Black Empire was this huge swath of history, but the Titans only give it a few pages, from that point of view in this book.
The Jailer could have existed with these books being canon. The Grimoire could have existed with these books being the Word of God. All you had to do was introduce the jailer as a new villain, unrelated to any Warcraft story not involving death, and write the grimoire to dive into the lore and history of the Shadowlands rather than as a big middle finger to the 3 books that preceded it. Here, to prove my point, I will do it for them. In the Chronicle books, it was established that the Dreadlords got Frostmourne and the Helm of Domination from the Shadowlands, lied, and they told the Legion that they actually went and made them. Never once did it establish from whence they got these relics, so, okay, where did they get them from? Well, as it would have been revealed in Shadowlands, that would have been from none other than the jailer, the ruler of them all, where the irredeemable go to fade away. Now the jailer gave the Dreadlords these artifacts so that he could have an agent inside reality, so that he could watch and monitor Sargeras' crusade, the influx of souls that crusade brought, in the world of Azeroth, which he's heard very much about from all those bad guys we have sent to him over the years. For the jailer, well, he has one singular desire: collect souls, gain power, break open the veil, and rewrite reality in his image using the spirit of a Titan. Now that the Legion is gone, Azeroth is slowly dying, and those who can stop him are all at war with one another. This is the perfect time to make his move. Boom. There, done. See how easy that was? Here, I'll do it again. You ready? Okay, so the grimoire, right? Yeah, okay. It's how the denizens of the Shadowlands see the cosmos. It is their point of view, but we know that our books, the stuff we know, our chronicles, those books are actually how everything works and functions. The grimoire is simply a thought exercise into how the minds of a different reality work. Of course, not everything in that book is simply a point of view because it had to have come from somewhere, right? It's that simple. It is that goddamn simple, yet the team behind current Warcraft did not do that. They broke the foundation of Warcraft and filled it with weaker material. And I mean it shouldn't have to be said, but if you take out the foundation of a house, you destroy the whole fucking house. If you try to slide out one foundation and just swap it with another, chances are you're going to destroy the house. So if there's one takeaway from this video, 1 ounce of information on how absolutely destructive Shadowlands has been to the game, it's that. It's the destruction of Warcraft's foundation and the destruction of everything we knew in lieu of something nobody wanted. My name is Dave. Thank you for watching.